All right, baseball fans, we're back. There are a lot of reasons why we haven't spoken in over 2 months, but none of them matter anymore. Here we are. It's an absolute treat to have you along for the ride this week. I am too excited to be back in front of the microphone to waste any more time. Let's get to it.
If you've got the time, we've got
baseball, ducks on the pod. That is one of those references you're either going to understand and find hilarious or not have a clue what that jingle is from and watch the joke sail over your head. Your hint is that it ties in perfectly with Miller Park. If you're still lost, a simple YouTube search for We've Got the Beer should let you on the inside of the joke. Let's talk about the stadium itself, though, because Miller Park is very cool. It was the 11th Major League ballpark I visited, the 9th among active stadiums, the other two being Old Yankee Stadium and Tiger Stadium. More so than any other ballpark I've been to, Miller Park it's got very unique sightlines. It looks a lot bigger on TV than it really is. It's built very smartly and compact. The upper decks go up and not back like they do at Comerica Park, PNC. Even Great American and Minute Maid, I've noticed they kind of, as you go farther and farther back in the upper deck, you're so far removed from the game, it's almost like you're not in the stadium. That's not the case in Miller Park. And because of that, Miller has 4 decks. Obviously, that contributes to the unusual viewpoints that you get as you walk around the stadium and stand in different spots. We started out in the 4th deck right behind home. Apparently the euchre seats, which must be another inside joke because the guy next to us kept referencing it, though it meant nothing to us. I mean, I know who Bob Euchre is, but I don't know what made that section his seats. Anyway, by we and us, I mean me, my good friend Ian, his longtime roommate going back to college, Connor, and their friend Drew, who they've met since moving to Chicago. All good dudes, overall a great group to go exploring with. Special thanks to those guys for accompanying me on the journey, especially Drew, who drove the hour and a half both ways from Chicago to Milwaukee and then back. The 4 of us started up there in the 4th deck. Another thank you goes out to Nader for the tickets as a delayed Christmas gift. Thanks, homie. I appreciate it. Then from our spot in the upperest of upper decks, directly behind home, we migrated to the right field bleachers, but not on the first level, the second, which is, I don't know, maybe 20 feet above field level. I'm pretty terrible at judging that kind of stuff, estimating anything distance related. I'm pretty useless, but it is just a little bit off of ground level there in the right field bleachers where we were at. Those seats are an awesome way to take in a game, an awesome spot, even though you can't see the right field wall and at some point the right fielder goes back to make a play, you lose sight of him, but that's all right. It was a hot day and there was a nice breeze coming in from behind us. A unique part of Miller Park is the openness of the outfield areas. It's a retractable roof and they can also open up those walls in the back there to let some breeze in there, which really helped on a day like the one that we were at. It was Dollar Dog Day in Milwaukee that day, so I did my part and put away 5 of those bad boys, and I promise it wasn't as much hot dog as it sounds. They were pretty skinny, more puppies than full-grown doggies. Ian, Connor, and Drew will attest. The Brewers hit a couple of home runs in that game, so we did have the honor and privilege of watching Bernie Brewer go down his slide in left center. Interestingly, the slide doesn't stick out as much as you'd think. It blends in quite nicely. It fits. It's a focal point without being an eyesore, and I hope the Marlins can feel the shade I'm throwing their way for their hideous fountain sculpture thing that they've got out there in their outfield. That has got to go. They could take a lesson from the Brewers. Seeing the sausage race live and in person was nothing short of electric. I believe the hot dog won, which was only right since it was Dollar Dog Day. Of course, I had to take a walk around the whole place to explore. What I found were more great places to watch a ball game. No matter where I went, I felt like I would have been happy to stay there for the duration of the game. Miller Park's left field is full of a lot of cool stuff. There's this staircase that's almost hiding in plain sight, connecting the first and second levels, and it sort of feels like it's only supposed to be used by staff, but right as you hit the landing in the middle of the flight, you can look straight out at the field through everyone sitting there in the left field bleachers. It's hard to describe. I'll try to post a picture on Twitter so you guys can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Get that up on the Facebook page as well. Remember to follow us at Ducks on the Pod on Facebook and Twitter. Again, notes for the show each and every week. You can find those on sportshackswithanx.com. There's also this little restaurant bar thing out there in left. I don't know if it's a place you have to have a special ticket for or if it's open for everyone or what, but it definitely looked like the perfect spot for a lunch. The overarching theme of Miller Park is a constant focus on the game, I thought. Even with the sausages racing and Bernie taking trips down the slide, you can tell that this place was built to allow 40,000 people to enjoy a good view of the game. Miller Park is built for baseball fans. It's a must-see for baseball fans. And Milwaukee is only an hour and a half north of Chicago. So if you're in that area, I highly recommend taking the time out to visit Milwaukee, and in particular, Miller Park. Memorial Day, Monday afternoon, we were in Milwaukee. The night before, Ian and I spent in the center field bleachers at Wrigley Field. My first trip back there since all the remodeling they did a couple of years ago. It's always been a gem. Now it's immaculate. But I want to talk about what happened while I was there, not just the place itself, because I can't do it justice. Simple as that. You must go see Wrigley Field for yourself. That's the only way you'll come to appreciate it. But this was Sunday Night Baseball, Giants-Cubs, and it was a wacky one. Both teams scored 3 in the first. The Giants did it by hitting only one ball out of the infield. The Cubs ricocheted 3 hits off a Giants starter Ty Block. Pablo Sandoval, starting at second base for the first time in his career, had to dive to field a hot shot off the bat of Javi Baez. And it was fun to watch Panda on that side of the infield with so much more ground to cover. I thought he actually acquitted himself quite nicely. But from there on, it was pretty much all Cubs. Baez homered to right in the fourth, and I'm still trying to figure out how that ball carried out. One of those, he just flicked it, and it kept on carrying, kept going until it landed in the safety of the seats. Albert Almora had himself a night, doubling home the Cubs' 8th and final run and also making a fantastic running catch in deep center. The Cubs fans out there in the bleachers were chanting his name, and he had some fun playing along with them, showing off a couple dance moves. The best part about Sunday night at Wrigley, though, was the people I met. There was Randy from LA, who was a Dodgers fan visiting Wrigley for the very first time. We talked about how Cubs fans are just different from everybody else, especially now that the team is really good. The folks in Chicago actually watch the game that's unfolding in front of them. Imagine that, paying attention to the live entertainment that you paid to come see. What a profound concept. But seriously, you can tell that these people are paying attention and that they know their stuff. They cheer the little baseball intricacies and the understated plays that casual fans simply do not understand or even notice for that matter. They appreciate baseball at Wrigley Field, and I appreciate that they do. I hope Cubs fans who are there regularly don't take that for granted. You are a special case. It is not like that everywhere, I can assure you of that. Randy and I also talked briefly about Dodger Stadium. I told him it was very near the top of my list of ballparks to visit, and he said he loves it, but he hasn't been there in a few years because there's too many fights that happen now. As tragic as it is, this is true. We hear about it occasionally in the national news, and I'm sure you hear about it more if you live in the LA area. For whatever reason, probably a mix of a lot of reasons, some Dodgers fans enjoy beating the hell out of opposing fans. It's happened numerous times now, and I know it's not everybody. I know it doesn't happen every game. But the fact that it comes to mind at all speaks of how out of control things have become. And the fact that a Dodgers fan, who was a big dude, I might add, is reluctant to go to games because he doesn't want to be caught in the middle of a fight that breaks out, that's a major issue. Now, let me repeat. This is a major issue if fans feel unsafe going to games. Now, hopefully, the Dodgers get this under control, get it figured out. But I cannot even believe that we have to shame them into getting a handle on their fans. How ridiculous is that? The other guy I met on Sunday night in Wrigley was Robbie, and he introduced me to a new game you can play while sitting in the stands. And I love stuff like this, games inside the game. I saw him passing around a cup stuffed with dollar bills every half inning, and I realized he and some friends were reacting to something on the field while there were no players out there. And I knew they were playing some kind of game. I just didn't know what the hell it was, and after seeing this happen a few times, I gave up trying to figure it out, and I just had to ask. So Ian and I had gotten to the game a little later than you would have wanted to get there when you have general admission seats. So the first few innings, we were standing against the wall in right center, waiting for a spot to open up. Robbie's friend sitting next to him got up to get more beer, so I took his seat for a second to introduce myself and ask him what kind of competition he was leading. There were about 8 to 10 guys that he was leading in this game, sitting all spaced out all throughout the section we were in. And that's when Robbie introduced me to mound ball. And quite frankly, I don't know how I hadn't ever heard of this before. Here it goes. Every half inning, this cup stuffed with dollar bills gets passed to a new person. And when you get the cup, you add $1. Then you wait. When the home plate ump tosses a ball out to the mound in between half innings, you watch to see where the ball ends up. If it stays completely on the dirt and you're holding the cup, you win all the money in the cup. If the ball rolls off the dirt and back onto the grass, you pass the cup on, and the next person adds their dollar and waits for the end of his or her half inning. And that's mound ball. It's simple, even if Robbie is the judge of where the ball is sitting, and some of his rulings are questionable at times. It's gambling, even if it's on a super small scale, and it's baseball, even if the action comes when there are no players on the field. Give me those 3 things: simple, gambling, baseball. I love it. So next time you're at a game with friends, remember to bring some singles and grab an empty cup on your way to your seats. Then you can have fun playing mound ball just like I did with Robbie and company in the center field bleachers at Wrigley Field. All right, baseball fans, I've got a serious question, and I need your help to come up with an appropriate answer here. When is it acceptable to leave a game early? Now, Ben is a loyal listener of ours and a great baseball mind, and he has told me that it is never acceptable to leave a game early under any circumstances ever. But hear me out on this. I go to a lot of baseball games. You may have noticed. Because of that, the experience has become less sacred for me. Now, when you're a kid and you're at a game, you're never sure when you're going to be back. So every game you're at, you're practically praying for it to go into extras so you can see some bonus baseball. But when you're grown up and planning on coming back in a week, you don't feel quite as obligated to stick around for the full time. It was Tuesday, May 15, Indians visiting the Tigers. It's the top of the 6th. Rajai Davis doubles home a run. Michael Brantley walks. Jose Ramirez doubles, scoring Davis to make it 8-3 Tribe. Francisco Lindor is intentionally walked. The bottom half of the Indians lineup that night featured Yan Gomes, Brandon Guyer, Jason Kipnis, Eric Gonzalez, and Greg Allen. In other words, nobody I really felt like I had to stick around to see, so I decided I'd seen enough and I left. I was also preparing for a 4.5-hour drive down to Cincinnati the next day, and then a 4.5-hour drive back up to Detroit the morning after that, which, that's a lot of travel in the middle of a work week. I should also mention that the game seemed very much out of reach at the time. I had little to no faith in the Tigers being able to overcome a 5-run deficit against an Indians bullpen that had Andrew Miller available, albeit in a limited capacity as he tried to return from the DL. The Tigers lineup that night was without Miguel Cabrera, without Jeimer Candelario, who I consider to be two of the best three hitters they have on the team. So please forgive my lack of confidence in anything significant happening with that set of extenuating circumstances. Of course, something major did happen despite all that. The Tigers pushed one across in the 6th and then tagged the Tribe bullpen in the 7th, scoring 5 runs on Dan Otero and the recently returned Andrew Miller to take a 9-8 lead. That would be good enough as the Tigers held on to secure a rare series win against the Indians. The last time the Tigers won a series against the Tribe was May 1st through the 3rd of 2017. Since then, they were 2-15, including a 4-game sweep in April. Again, forgive me for not believing. So you tell me, when is it acceptable to leave a game early? I feel like I had a legitimate case here. Unfortunately, this time it backfired on me and I missed out on a big comeback. But hey, that's just the risk you take when you decide you've seen enough. Shohei Ohtani pitched in Detroit, and of course I was there. You think I'm going to miss that? If I had to sum him up in one word, brilliant. The breaking stuff baffles hitters. The 3-pitch sequence to strike out Jose Iglesias leading off the 5th was simply unfair. A 70-mile-per-hour curveball buckled the knees and broke right into the inside corner. I felt bad for Iglesias. That pitch was utterly unhittable. Then a 77-mile-per-hour slider that Iglesias swung at and missed. And finally, an 80-mile-per-hour slider that had even sharper break had Iglesias hopelessly waving over the top of it. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. The fastball blows hitters away. He gassed it up to 101 in what turned out to be his final pitch of the evening, resulting in a Jeimer Candelario ground ball right back to him to end the 5th. I believe that still stands as the fastest pitch thrown by a starter this season. I'd have to check up on that. Ohtani really only got squared up once, and that was by Nick Castellanos, who lasered a double off the left field wall in the 3rd, and ended up being harmless. Castellanos was stranded out there, and it was an absolute treat to watch Ohtani go to work on the mound. I felt a bit honored that Mike Scioscia had chosen Detroit as the next stop on the Ohtani tour. With him pitching on a regularly irregular schedule, I didn't think that I would get to see him, and I'm beyond glad that I did. And make no mistake, this is a tour. There were lots of people with Ohtani jerseys, a few people with signs welcoming him to Detroit, which was nice, even though I don't think he can read English. There were a lot of Japanese people who I think it's safe to assume were only there to see Ohtani. It reminded me a lot of Ichiro's run with the Mariners in the early 2000s. It brought back memories of going to games against the Red Sox when Daisuke Matsuzaka brought his talents stateside. And like Hideki Matsui's run with the Yankees, it was just an awesome thing to see with all of those guys, and it's even better today with Ohtani. Here's a guy we've been hearing stories about for years now, and finally, we're getting to see why there was so much hype surrounding him. The talent that he has, both on the mound and in the batter's box, it's impressive to say the least. This is a young guy, remember. He's not some established veteran who's been doing this. He is coming up and still developing and still getting better. I mean, that's why I was there, right? To see the hype, to see if he could live up to it. And I'm sure there were a good number of fans who came out that night, despite a daunting forecast, just to watch the newest Japanese baseball phenom. Hell, even the guy selling programs at the gate was talking about him. Now, the only bad part was the rain, which started coming down by the bucket just as Ohtani finished his 4th inning, and it forced a bit of a delay, about 25-30 minutes, and then the game continued. The Angels had their at-bat, and then Ohtani actually returned for the 5th, much to my surprise and delight. Then the rain came yet again, and Ohtani's outing wouldn't survive the second delay, which was a bit longer than the first. Having seen what I came to see, you guessed it, I left early. Once that second delay surpassed the first one, I knew Scioscia wouldn't be sending Ohtani back out, and I counted myself lucky to see him continue after the first delay. I knew I wouldn't get lucky twice and have it happen again. So Shohei Ohtani finished with 5 innings, 3 hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, 1 run allowed, and plenty of new fans in Detroit. I highly, highly, highly recommend, I can't say that enough, if you have the chance to see him when the Angels come to your town, I implore you not to pass up the opportunity. He is more than worth the price of admission. Unfortunately, it appears as though he may not be pitching anymore this season. Still, go watch Shohei Ohtani play baseball. He's good, and it's fun to be a part of something like this. In episode 29, I asked you who is the only player in the history of baseball to win an MVP award in both the American and National Leagues. The answer is Frank Robinson, who won the NL MVP in 1961 with the Reds and then won the AL MVP in 1966 with the Orioles. Props to you if you got that one right. This week's question comes to us from Ben, an avid Cubs fan, a loyal listener since day one, and apparently someone who never, ever leaves a baseball game early. Ben says there is only one Major League ballpark with foul poles that are not painted yellow. He asks, which ballpark is it and what color are the foul poles? Now, shoot me the correct answer and win yourself a super exclusive Ducks on the Pod Season 2 t-shirt that is sure to help you turn heads and earn some catcalls. That's a wrap on episode number 30 of Ducks on the Pod. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Feels great to be back in front of the microphone with you again. I'm still working on finalizing the outline for episode number 31, so I'm not totally sure when I'll be able to bring that to you yet. But I can guarantee you this, it won't be as long as you waited in between episodes number 29 and 30. Until next time, I'm your host, Mitch Gatzke, reminding you, keep your glove on the dirt, your bat off your shoulder, and always keep your eye on the ball.
See you later. Adios! See ya! Goodbye! Be gone!
Back, gone.